Welcome to Being Intrepid, where each conversation is a front row seat to how bold leaders are reimagining learning to meet the moment and shape what's next. I'm your host, Sam Herring. For the past 25 years, I've been building and leading learning companies to help people grow and organizations thrive. Today, I'm joined by Darci Hall, head of HR strategy, learning, and development at Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest nonprofit healthcare systems in the country. They bring care and coverage together in a uniquely integrated model. Darci has decades of experience and wisdom as a learning leader in healthcare and professional services. We first met when Darci was a key leader in the Xerox learning business that acquired a business that I happened to lead at the time. I knew then that Darci was a special leader. What I love most about Darci as a leader is her energy, enthusiasm, and optimism. Darci, welcome to Being Intrepid.
Thank you, Sam.
So exciting to have you on the podcast. Darci, you're leading a major learning transformation at Kaiser. Why is this a priority for the organization? And what's the biggest shift that you're driving right now?
Yeah, so I am leading a large transformation project where we're looking at redesigning learning at the enterprise or system level at Kaiser Permanente. And the reason for that is really around affordability, consistency, quality, gaining economies of scale, and being able to drive that across our entire organization. KP, like many other health systems, are in a unique and challenging position right now in time where budgets are tight and we want to make sure that we can continue to provide affordable health care to our members across the organization and also be able to develop and grow our workforce in meaningful ways.
Awesome. Awesome. Was there, when you stepped into this role in the beginning of this transformation, were there specific learning challenges or gaps that you were seeing that made this transformation particularly urgent?
Yes. So one of the things is that traditionally, Kaiser Permanente is a distributed organization. Through tradition, they have always had learning and development in their markets, in their business units, in functional areas, in clinical, and things were treated very different and separately. And then what is happening now, like I said, from an imperative standpoint, is there an impact to the employee's experience? So when employees engage in learning, it's very distributed, it looks different, it feels different, it's not contextual in many cases. And again, it's not affordable. We have so many learning professionals in such a large organization that aren't communicating effectively and aren't understanding across the entire enterprise what things are being developed at the top of the house and what things really need to be localized within each market. So one of the first things we're looking at is our governance model, and that is hopefully will bring our learning teams together. So as we start to do this redesign and restructure work, what we want to do is look at bringing a governance board that can start to look at a single learning strategy, look at priorities that drive business results across the entire enterprise while still honoring, like I said, some of the localized education that needs to go on within our markets and functional areas.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I want to jump into the details, but let's zoom back up to the 100,000 foot level and just tell us a little about how you got started in this career. What was like a key influence or defining experience that's inspired you as a learning leader?
Yeah. So one of the things that has inspired me over the course of many years, as you have said, that I've been in learning and development. In the beginning, one of the things that always felt good was the ability to look at individuals and know that you're being in service of them and providing them with education that gives them opportunity to grow in career. So that was the beginnings of my love for learning and development and really wanting to be a part of that. And then as I've moved through my career, I had the opportunity to speak at the UN General Council.
Mhm.
And one of the things that that we were talking about during COVID was that education really is a social determinant of health. And
Mm,
that when we think about education for all, what does that really mean? How do we increase access to education? So, at the corporate level, at KP, our workforce in some ways is very spoiled. We provide access to education. They have a computer, they have a wireless network, they have all the things that they need to be successful and opportunity to access it. When we look outside of corporations, I believe we have a responsibility within our communities as well to advocate for access for all so that those communities are educated and also have opportunity to grow, whether it's in career, supporting others as caregivers. And so that was really important to me as I have continued on my journey in learning development to be a part of that and be an advocate for those that maybe don't have a voice in this.
yeah, that's amazing, Darcy. And I know, during our conversations, you've talked about the urgency of that career ladder inside the healthcare organizations you've worked in, where there's a pressing demand for certain skills. And also, the entry level roles are hard to live on, those kinds of. So can you talk a little bit about how you've brought that experience speaking to the UN to life, kind of help us connect the dots between the real lived experience for your people and career development in the organizations you've served.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at Providence is really the best example. Being at KP, I'm still pretty new, but definitely have the same ideas and opinions and strategies.
Hmm.
But when I was at Providence, after being exposed to the reality that while Providence pays well, many corporations, especially on the West Coast, when you look at entry level positions, they're
Hmm.
usually at minimum wage, which means that a lot of those positions, people have to have two or three jobs to make a living. We also talk about the working homeless, which is another area that entry level positions often are working homeless. And that's one of the areas that I really wanted to start to look at. How do we focus on those populations of our underserved and marginalized employees, as well as our communities at large? And so, being in Southern California, for example, it's expensive to live there,
Hmm.
and quite frankly, wages haven't kept up. And there's an affordability issue that
Hmm.
healthcare always is struggling with. And so, one of the things we did is we looked at bringing in a partner that could come in and help us to increase access to those specific areas of entry level position. And so, how do we look at somebody who's in food and nutrition? How do we provide access and opportunity for them to become a medical assistant or a
Hmm.
certified nursing assistant or a social worker? And being able to do that for those communities not only raises them up and makes them better, but it makes us better as an organization as well. And so that's one area that I'm really proud. When I was at Providence, we were successful in really creating opportunity. And when I left, one of the last data points we had was that 54% of our non-white minority employees were accessing and using our tuition assistance program and being able to move up in career. And so that's what I think is a super exciting win for Providence. And I can only hope they're going to continue to keep that momentum.
Wow. Well, what a legacy to leave. And, as you and I have discussed, and, my wife is a nurse practitioner, so I understand the space pretty well. And that's a win-win, not just for the individuals, but like you said, for Providence and other healthcare organizations as well, because it's so hard to fill these roles, like the MA role, for example, huge gaps. So the fact that you're able to help people move along in their careers through learning is really, really incredible. Like you said, a win-win for the people and the organization. Darcy, let's kind of get down to brass tacks here a little bit. So,
Sure.
we've got people out there listening who are learning leaders, maybe aspiring learning leaders. You've led multiple transformations. You shared a little bit earlier about setting up a governance framework as an early step. Can you share just some advice about how to get started with a learning transformation?
Yeah, I think first of all, you need to understand how to get learning on the board. And what I mean by that is having executive pay that pay attention to learning.
Mm,
And that has always been one of the crux or Achilles heel to learning and development professionals is having that business mindset. So if you're
mhm,
new into learning, I highly recommend educate yourself about what are the strategic priorities of the organization. What do your executives care about? And then how do you start to align that messaging with your workforce? We know that workforce drives organizational performance. Period. End of statement. Your people are driving the performance of the organization. And so how do we start to think about that in a way that you position learning to get your executives to pay attention to so that they're committed to really looking at how do we drive learning to be that strategic partner, to be that driver that not only engages your employees, retains your employees, and makes your employees more productive, but also has the ability to skill and reskill to then continue to create that competitive edge for the organization. So I think that step one is from a learning perspective, talk in business terms, talk to your executives in ways that they'll understand. Don't talk in learning terms. You'll lose them and they won't understand exactly what you're trying to drive for. And
mhm.
getting that executive commitment, I think, is number one in getting started. If you see that, hey, there's opportunity here for transformation, that's a great way to start.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's flip that around a little bit. Have you experienced times when there have been challenges getting executive buy-in? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, yes. There's often times when there isn't executive buy-in, or at
Yeah.
least in the beginning, because they don't fully understand it. And so overcoming that in a couple ways. One, at least in healthcare, we are very relational. And
Mhm.
so work gets done through relationships in healthcare. So if you're a new leader in healthcare, I recommend brushing up on your interpersonal communication skills, your relationship building skills as well. And so, one is to build the relationship and trust with your executives and to show up as the subject matter expert in the area.
Mhm.
And then be able to build the business case for the transformation, for the change. What is it going to get the organization if they do this, if they invest? And I always make sure that when I'm communicating with our leaders, that oftentimes people think of learning as a cost center because it
Mhm.
is,
Mhm.
but don't use that language. Change that to investment. You're investing in your people. And I always tell new leaders or existing leaders that are in this space is talk about it as an investment. Don't talk about it as a cost. And if you talk about it as an investment, you have a responsibility then to show a return on that. So anything you do, you need to be thinking about how we're going to measure it. How do we show that the investment is getting a return for the organization? Even if it is retention, you can look at the dollars of retaining 1% of your workforce.
Mhm.
Typically will hit into the millions, especially for larger organizations. For Providence, for example, if you saved 1% of positions and they weren't turning, that was $53 million of savings to the
Wow.
organization. So
Wow.
things like that, start to work with your workforce insights group, your data analytics group, and build that business case up with meaningful numbers and be able to take that soft benefit and turn it into a hard benefit.
Love it. Love it. Darcy, you could be doing the master class on this. This this is great. This is great. So,
Um,
okay, so we talk about investment. Let's unpack that a little bit. Like investing into what? Like talk about some of the things that you've asked for investment for? Maybe it's a learning innovation. You and I have talked about,
Yeah.
exploring new modalities, that kind of thing. What's an innovation that maybe where you nailed it and maybe one that maybe didn't go as planned and you wanted to kind of it's chalk it up as a learning. So tell us about some of those examples.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love technology, not gonna lie. I love technology. I love enabling technology. And there's many times that I have had ideas. And one, I can say, get a good team of technologists behind you.
Hmm.
There's a certain human being that both Sam and I know. uh, Works for me now, and he has been amazing because there are times where he has saved me from myself when I've said, we need to invest in, we need this technology and it's going to be amazing. And he will say, no, that is not going to be what you think, or it's not going to roll out in how you think it's going to. And so, one, I think there's always the new shiny object, and
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
always interested in pushing the innovative dial. And one area I would say that it's not that it hasn't worked out, but it is slower to adoption, and it's because it's innovative. So in the VR AR space,
Mm. Yep.
looking at learning and development, it is, it's still, I think, a valuable modality in healthcare. I know that we've used it, my team has used it for patient education, especially for like physical therapy. You can send
Mm.
them home with an iPad, and instead of, the little sheets of paper with really bad photocopies of images and trying to figure out, they
I've
can,
seen those.
yeah, they can rotate it, they can do all those
Yeah.
things. And it allows nurses to not have to do the training that they used to.
Hmm.
So there's some really cool things there, but as far as broad adoption at this point in time, I think it's going to take more time for organizations, especially healthcare, who is very traditional and slow moving, to fully embrace and adopt VR. So it hasn't gone exactly. The plus was at the time that we implemented that, we had a grant from COVID. Go figure.
Okay.
So we used grant money, so I
Okay.
wasn't completely strung out, which was good. But be careful and do your homework, especially with some of these different innovations out there, and think about organizational readiness.
Yeah.
We implemented LXP. Um, and in my past role, and it worked great, and it was absolutely where we needed to go. We rolled it out during COVID, which was good because everything was going online, and healthcare is traditional instructor led. They love that, and cohorts and all that. So it worked out okay. But after COVID, people didn't fully understand how to utilize an LXP.
Mm.
In healthcare, we push things a lot. We're pushing learning to you,
Hmm.
and you're
Hmm.
getting, our employees weren't trained on how to pull and how to
Yeah.
collaborate, how to think about education differently, and
Yeah.
we hadn't done a very good job of change management. So I can honestly say it was the right thing to do. The organization wasn't ready for it yet. And
Yeah.
I think that we need to be mindful and be honest with ourselves, even though as learning leaders and learning people, we love the next best thing and we see how cool it's going to be. But if your organization isn't ready for it, it's not going to land the way you want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. That push-pull balance can be a challenge. And like you said, the culture has to be ready for it as well. Um, all right. Well, let's look into the future. So, Darcy, let's imagine in 5 years ahead now. What do you think learning in healthcare is going to look like? What's perhaps an exciting change that you see on the horizon?
Yeah. So learning in healthcare is going to catch up with other industries, I believe. So we're a little behind, but I think the opportunity for design in learning is going to be something that I think will be able to revolutionize some
Hmm.
of how we design and develop today. And what I mean by that is within the rhythm of business.
Mm.
So, with new tools and new modalities coming out, the way that we help support clinicians, the way we help support our call centers, our non clinical folks, I think will be much more within the rhythm of business, utilizing AI as a partner.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that there is a lot of talk around AI and some nervousness around AI. I don't see AI taking people's jobs per se away. I think what it's going to do is take away maybe some of the tasks, but
Yeah.
leave the cool stuff for the people.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help us increase productivity. And I think as learning folks, it will be able give us the ability to create a more personalized
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
We're not pulling people out into classroom. They can practice within the safety of their
Hmm.
offices, their homes, their iPads, and they can engage with AI in a way that we haven't seen yet. So that allows people to get the confidence they need, whether they're leading or they're practicing or they're upskilling, but they can practice much more intuitively, I think, with an AI type assistant in the future. And I think that that's the way we'll look at e-learning. Sorry, e-learning. I see e-learning kind of evolving itself out. It was cool back in the 90s and new, and we loved it. And now we've shifted to micro learning, which has really helped and condensed. And I see now AI coming up and these AI assistants and AI coaches and AI support really being that more experiential coach, informal learning I see in the future for people so that they're not having to stop and learn and then go and try to translate it, but they're doing it within their day-to-day activities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that those coaches, tutors, role plays in the flow, contextualized to the learner's actual work and experience is a super compelling vision. And it's like it's becoming it's here now, and like we're seeing little pockets of it. But like you said, there's so many opportunities in healthcare. So exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited too. We'll see where it goes. Check,
Yeah.
check in with me in 5 years.
Okay.
We'll see if
Okay. I'll put it on my calendar, Darcy.
put a little reminder.
Exactly, exactly. So, okay, let's wrap with your wisdom. What do you think is the biggest mistake healthcare organizations make when they're trying to modernize or transform learning? And also, like, what's a mindset shift that you think leaders need to embrace to be successful as healthcare learning leaders?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say from a healthcare lens, when we look at what could we do, is we in healthcare are very risk adverse. We should,
Mm,
right? We're caring for people, people's health, and we should be risk adverse in
hmm.
that space.
Yeah.
But we tend to translate that risk piece or risk mindset to how
Hmm.
we think about things like learning and development, where we can be more risky. We can take
Hmm.
more chances, we can practice, we can fail within learning and still be able to provide excellent patient care at the end of the day. And so,
Hmm.
what my hope is for healthcare is that you look at things that we can do that we can move faster and be more agile in. And learning is one of those areas that we
Yeah.
really can increase agility and provide much higher value to the workforce than we do right now. Because every decision we make, even in learning, if we're going to change modality, I mean, I can speak today, we're looking at moving into adaptive learning at KP, and they haven't used adaptive before, and they haven't seen it. And so we had to have a bunch of people and doctors and hospitalists and everybody get around and look at this modality, which, as you know, it's not a trailblazer innovation. It's, like I say, settlers. It's not even pioneering, it's settling type of modality. And we spent a lot of time just having to show what if we change to an adaptive learning modality for just a particular piece of content.
Yep.
We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So my hope is that we can start to look at how do we build trust
Hmm.
and how do we look at increasing agility in certain areas where it isn't as risky as we might think it is in totality going forward. would be my
Perfect. So leaning in, taking a few more risks, recognizing that, you're not in a patient care situation. So you've got some flexibility.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, you can play a little bit more. You can dream a little bit more, and I hope that all healthcare sees that and starts to really look at how they up their game. Because
Yeah.
one of the things, and you know this, and I know this, the generations that are coming in, they're demanding development, career development. They want to have a path. They
Mhm.
want to be developed, and if they're not going to get it with you, they'll jump. The idea of loyalty has kind of gone out the window. I think even
Mhm.
Gen X kind of started it, and we have to be better at being agile and creating career pathing and thinking about development in a much more strategic way than we did in the past, so that we can attract talent and retain talent.
Fantastic. Well, Darcy, thank you for being so generous with your time and your insights. As always, I've had fun and learned so much from you today. And listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, follow or subscribe to Being Intrepid wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've got your own learning challenge you're wrestling with, drop us a line. And until next time, keep asking the hard questions, chart your own course, and keep on learning. Thank you.